Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On the Bright Side. I'm your host, Caroline Susko, and I hope you all are having a good day whenever you are listening. And I'm so glad you're here because today I am so lucky to be joined by Kira Kessler, the co-founder and co-CEO of Rock and Rags. Rock and Rags is a boutique that started in Chicago with the mission to empower every woman shopping to feel confident in their own skin. I met Kira last year and I was so inspired by not only her incredible work ethic, but how her and her family started the boutique in Chicago and how this shop is growing worldwide so quickly and in just a few short years. And beyond the boutique, she and her family have created a vibrant community where so many young women have been inspired to be more confident and to be their authentic selves. So, what better guest to have on the podcast? I know you'll love her as much as I do and easily learn so much. So, with that, let's welcome co founder, co CEO, girl boss, Kira Kessler onto the podcast to talk about all things small business. Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so glad we get to finally do this. So, have you ever been on a podcast before, or is this like your first one?
I have. I've done a couple of podcasts
Okay,
in the
perfect.
past, and then I get really nervous after to listen to them. So we'll hope all goes
No,
well
you're good.
today.
You're good. So, let's do this. We'll just start right from the beginning. Do you want to explain kind of how we met in the world of rock and rags?
You explain it from your perspective.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so last year, Kira had posted on her Instagram that she was looking for ambassadors to, what's the word?
Like, represent the brand.
Represent the brand. Yeah. And so I had put in my application and I heard back and I had gotten accepted to work with Kira. And it's a 6-month program and you get clothes set and you work and take pictures with them. And then you learn like the ins and outs of the fashion industry and learn how she started it and all that. And we had like Zoom meeting once a month. So we got to learn so much, not just about like the clothes, but like being interested in the business as well.
Yeah, so we started our Rock and Rags University program few years back, really because I wanted to bring my knowledge that I had had to college students. Because I remember when I was going through college, I always knew I wanted to start Rock and Rags. And so with all my classes, I had such a practical application that I felt like a lot of the information that I learned was more meaningful because I could see how you would really apply it in real life in your career. And I remember thinking, like, I wish everybody had this opportunity to see how you'd actually use this knowledge. And so, if I can bring that to a new generation of young people that are interested in the fashion industry, that would be such a game changer. And for me, being able to help other young people in their career is definitely one of the most rewarding parts of the job. And so, our ambassador program with RNRU has been really fun. And we try to take it a little deeper than what a normal ambassador program is.
Definitely.
Like, I think, like a lot of times it can feel so transactional, when really it should be about human connection and relationships. And so that's why we meet every month with me so that I can get FaceTime with all of you guys and actually get to learn about you and your passions. And you guys are helping us a ton by representing us on campus. And so it's like, how can I help you in return and help you get your foot in the door in the fashion industry?
Yeah, and the girls that I did the program with, like I'm still friends with them. We're all still like commenting on each other's photos and like when we're around the areas, we're still like in contact with each other. So it's so nice to also be able to get in contact with girls that want to do what you're doing too. So it's all in the same realm.
Yeah, I'm such a firm believer in girls lifting each other up and being able to support and inspire one
Mhm.
another. And I always felt like in high school, that was a struggle for me, as I didn't have like a great support system and people that wanted to build me up. And so I wanted to be able to try to create a safe space for other women that you don't need to feel self-conscious if you want to be an influencer, or if you want to go into fashion, which a few years ago may have sounded crazy to a lot of people
Mhm.
to get into that career. But I think so much of your success is dependent on the people that you surround yourself with. And so if I can help to foster a community that can allow people to surround themselves with like-minded women, then we're all going to support each other. We're all going to grow together. And I think that so much of what Rock and Rags has been over the past 10 years is really growing up alongside our customers, alongside our employees, alongside our ambassadors, because I started it when I was 17. So I was still super young. I mean, I'm 29 now. That's still super young. And so
Mhm.
we're all learning and growing together every day.
Yeah, and that's literally insane starting it at 17. I didn't know you were that young. We'll get into it, but that's crazy. And just going back to like what you said before about we're in a generation now where like this can't be taught in classroom, this kind of stuff, like influencing collaborations and all of that. And we're so much now focused on social media because that's like the world we live in. So to be able to have like these out of classroom experiences that help you get to know what you want to do is like literally absolutely amazing.
Well, I'm so glad that it's been impactful for you.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. Okay. So first, how about you tell us just about yourself as a person, not just rock and rags like you, Kira.
Okay. So, hi, I'm Kira. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit from a young age. I grew up at Camp CD City, we used to call it. My dad owned a CD and record store called CD City, and my parents met at a record store. So music, rock and roll has always been such a part of my DNA, and I've always been a really creative person who wanted to help people. So like I remember starting my own jewelry business and even being younger, being like 10 years old and making bookmarks and selling them for a quarter at my dad's record store. And then going into high school, I remember somebody I knew passed away from cancer, and I probably made 300 little bracelets with
hmm
like the ribbon on them to sell and raise money for her foundation. And over the years, I just went into all of these different kind of entrepreneurial ventures, and I knew that I didn't really want to go down a typical career path because I've always had so many ideas and been so hungry, and I knew it would be difficult for me going into like a cookie cutter role where you were
hmm
kind of just a corporate drone or like a chess player in someone else's game. And that actually did happen. And as I expected, I really struggled with it. But I always knew that I wanted to really build something for myself that I could be proud of. And so um, going into high school, I knew I was like, I want to start a fashion brand. And so the second I was able to, I think I was 15 with a worker's permit, I got a job at Free People as soon as I was allowed to work
That's
and
precious.
loved it. Exactly. Just like surrounding myself with fashion at any chance that I could get. And that was really where like the beginning of Rock and Rags was born.
Yeah. So did you go to college or did you just do this right from high school?
No, I went to college. I went to Indiana University,
Okay.
the Kelly School of Business. And, the reason that I went there is because that's where I was able to get the most scholarships.
hmm
So at the time when I was going off to school, my dad still had a struggling record store. Come the dawn of the early 2000s, 2010s, nobody was buying CDs and records anymore. And when that is one of the sole sources of income for your family. My mom was a nurse, so she had some income, but
Yeah.
nothing crazy. That's really scary to have your product that you sell become obsolete. And so I needed to find somewhere that I could get a lot of scholarships, but also learn the things that I needed to learn in order to be successful in this dream someday.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you were in college, were you the kind of girl that was like, I want to go out, I want to do 101 things, or were you like the hustler, go, go, go from like in those 4 years?
I think a little of both. I mean, I
Okay.
definitely did my fair share of partying.
Who
Don't get
doesn't? Yeah.
Yeah, I loved the social scene, but there was also a lot of nights and weekends that I spent at home in my dorm room, like working on ideas. I was basically posting on Instagram every single day since I was 17. So to back up a little bit, I got that job at Free People. I loved it, and I was their top sales driver in the store in my hometown. And at the same time, my dad is sitting at his record store all day, every day, without a person walking through the door. And eventually it kind of dawned on me, like, why am I working so hard and doing all of this for this giant company that will never see me when I could be doing this for my own family? And one of my big frustrations is like, I couldn't use my creativity. Like, we would sell out of something on a rack and we weren't even allowed to put more stuff on the rack?
hmm
So that was when I decided to open Rock and Rags with my dad. It started still at CD City. So I just started an Instagram account. I think it was my junior or senior year of it was my junior year of high school. So I was actually probably 16 when I first
hmm
started the Instagram account and just started taking pictures of my friends. I remember we set up a green screen in the foyer of my mom's house. And at the time, I didn't even know what a green screen was. I
hmm
legitimately posted the pictures on the Instagram with the green background. You could probably still go back and find them. So that was pretty iconic. But then eventually we got some traction at the CD store with clothing, took a leap of faith and closed down CD City and opened Rock and Rags. So by the time that I went off to college, we had a fully functioning store. We had an Instagram account that I was working every day to grow. But I was doing it constantly while I was at college. And really, ever since I was 17, I've always had multiple jobs. So if I was working a full-time job, I would also be doing Rock and Rags. In
Mhm.
school, I would tutor Excel classes and still be doing Rock and Rags or whatever job I had at the time. But I really knew that I wanted to go into college and use it as a tool, use all of the resources that I had at my fingertips to try to eventually be successful in this business. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, girl boss moves left and right.
Yeah, and I think it's such a like, unique and special experience going into college because you're going into somewhere that you have every resource at your fingertips,
Mhm.
whether it's like access to programs that if you weren't in school you would have to pay for, access to resources and teachers and mentors, etc., and a community that can support you. And so I really used every aspect of my college experience to try to set myself up for success with Rock and Rugs, and it was really beneficial.
Yeah. So going back to when you started selling clothes at your dad's store, was that like a dad, like I need to sit down, like I really want to sell these clothes? Or like how did that look? Like saying, I want to transform this, not even transform, just like, can I sell a few things here starting off?
Yeah, it first started off as like a pipe dream. Like we would joke around and be like, "Oh, someday we'll have Rock and Rags, like play off of rock and roll, and we'll
Hmm.
bring in clothes and everything will work out and we'll be okay." And it was really just like a figment of our imagination. But I think in a way, looking back, we manifested that
Hmm.
success because all the things that we dreamed about actually happened. And when we started Rock and Rags, we were in a lot of debt from him trying to keep the CD store open as long as he could. And so we started the whole business, I think, with $4,000. We flew out to Vegas, which is where the clothing shows are that we attend for buying. And I remember we were in the bus on the way to the convention center and we passed some like super sketchy apartments, like off of the strip. And I remember my dad saying, like, that's where I'm going to live someday when our business fails, blah, blah, blah. And luckily, the opposite happened. Like the business really took off. We opened our first location, and within a few years, we had to move out of it because the lines would just go from the cash register all the way to the back of the store. So we
That's
got
incredible.
into like a bigger, brighter location, and then have continued growing ever since.
That's insane. So when you were taking your first few steps and wanting to go start a business, what did that look like for you? Because you were so young that like what did you just say, I'm just going to start posting on social media? Because I know like we touched in that a little bit because there's so many girls that are like, oh, I just want to start a fashion business and I want to do this, but actually being able to do it and going through that because that's so hard to do like in itself.
I think that the most important thing you can do is start. So many people, I think, would love to do something for themselves and start a business, but it can seem so daunting, and you want to have everything be perfect by the time that you actually launch it. And I would say for me, it was the opposite. Like, I just started trying to put us out there, put ourselves out there because we needed to. Like, we had to find a solution because you can't just keep having a struggling music business in a world of digital music. And so, I didn't really have another choice. And I used, again, whatever resources were at my fingertips. So at the time, like I had really cute friends with a great sense of style. So they were our models. Then from there, we started featuring our customers because then they would post us on their stories and their friends would find out about it from there. And it was really all grown out of this organic connection of like people I'd meet in the store, people I knew from school. It's continued to like people I'll meet at the farmer's market, people you'll
Mhm.
meet at the bar at 2 a.m. in the bathroom. I mean, really, it's about that like organic human connection. And still to this day, like we don't hire models from modeling agencies. We hire people that we've met in real life and like have really related to and think like not only are they beautiful and fashionable, but like they're genuinely good people. Because that's ultimately what I want this brand to bolster is like girls supporting girls and lifting each other up and really uplift the kind of people that are like that want to help each other.
Yeah. And I feel I definitely got that from my end, just being in the program, just again, being with all these girls, and they were all so uplifting, and everyone was commenting on each other's photos. And it was like a genuine connection. And you don't see that enough on social media, I feel like. So I feel like that was definitely a great way to foster that and really bring that message in because, sometimes people just have that message, but to actually do something with the message to be like, we want these real, strong, genuine connections of like girls lifting up girls.
Right, and it's not the easiest thing to find, especially in today's digital age, to be able to connect with somebody on a human level instead of just screen to screen. So that's why I do think like within RNRU and just in life, like actually being able to get on a call or look at each other and talk face to face is just so valuable.
Yeah, definitely. So when you were starting the company and going for it, I know we talked about social media being like the main way you spread the word, but would you say you used anything else? Because I know like usually when someone starts, it's not like, okay, here we go, take off, like this is going great. So what did you use besides social media to spread the word?
We did a lot of in-person events. So like I remember we used to do this event called Journey to La La Land because Lollapalooza is a really big thing in
Hmm.
Chicago. So we would do festival themed parties each year. And at first it just started at the store. Like one of my friends, Bryce, who was in my acting class, like he DJ'd and performed at it. Girls that I knew from high school were our models, and we did a fashion show. I remember I was literally making signs for it, like cutting them out of poster board from Walgreens and construction paper. Like it really started as simple as that and like trying to do everything that we could in house. And it grew that way by like people seeing their friends on the social media, people wanting to attend the events. And just honestly, at the end of the day, I think people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Like we all crave community and again, that connection. And so in the North Shore of Chicago, which is like where the movie Mean Girls was based off of, I think a lot of women were hungry for that connection.
Hmm.
And like being able to be together in a positive environment. And that's what I wanted to provide.
Yeah.
Um, I also think like growing up in the North Shore of Chicago and not being super well off, it was difficult to compete and it felt like a constant competition. And I was always a firm believer that you shouldn't have to buy $300 jeans or $300 dress to be accepted. And
Mhm.
so that was part of what I wanted to do with Rock and Rags is give anybody a way to be able to dress cute without having to spend an immense amount of money. And I think people connected with that because, like, even though it can feel like it, not everybody wants to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on
Yeah.
something that you're gonna wear one time. And
Yeah.
could never keep up, everyone's getting their makeup done professionally and their hair done and the nails and the sushi every night. Like it's a lot. And so to be able to come and get like a $26, $28 tank top is big for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. So when would you say Rock in Rags had that takeoff point where you started the online store where you were like, okay, we're doing this full time?
So I definitely do think there was like a moment that everything changed. So in 2019, I was living in New York after college, working a full-time job. I had worked for Macy's doing buying, and then I left and went to a digital marketing agency. And at the time, somebody had told us that we need to get on TikTok. And my brother who's my co-CEO, was really encouraging in terms of telling us we need to get on it, just post whatever, post random stuff. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. You just need to put yourself out there. And so we started posting on TikTok, and January 6th of 2020, we went viral on TikTok for the first time. And that was when everything really changed for our business. We were really blessed in terms of the timing because we were planning on launching the online store on January 26th. And so by the time that the online store launched, everybody that had found us from TikTok, it was just taking you to like a locked page on the website where you could put your email to be notified when the site went live.
Mhm.
So over the course of those couple weeks, we went from 5,000 email subscribers over the course of 7 years to 50,000
That's
virtually
insane.
overnight. And the same thing happened with Instagram. Like I had been at it for 7 years at this point, and I still couldn't get us to 10K followers. So I think for anyone listening that may feel discouraged in terms of their growth, like know that when it feels like nothing's working, when it feels like you want to give up, that's generally when something good is about to happen, and you kind of have to have it within yourself to keep pushing forward. And at that time, I was so frustrated. Like I felt like a failure that, okay, it's been 7 years and I couldn't even get us to 10K followers. And then suddenly, virtually overnight, everything started to take off. And we went to 20K, 30K, 40K, etc. And it really happened across all platforms. And when we first opened the online store, I remember we had 6 units of each style, like 6 pieces. And we sold out of almost everything the first day, which was so
That's
cool.
insane.
But we still didn't really have a ton of money to be able to buy into heavier quantities of inventory. And so it all came back to the relationships that we had been building for years with our vendors who said, hey, like let me send you stuff, you can pay me later, because we had like fostered these relationships with these vendors in our community over the years. Everybody was really willing to step up and help, and I think so much of our success has come from these relationships, whether it be with customers, with vendors, with ambassadors, etc. Like human connection is everything, and it's something that can really set you apart from those massive brands that just see you as another dollar sign.
Yeah. And going back to social media, like you never know what post it's going to be. I remember putting in so much work to just have these posts get like less than 100 views or whatever. And I'd be like, this was the one I thought was going to go famous. And then it's like the random one that you put like 0.2 seconds in that goes viral and like makes a difference overnight. You just have to take that one more step, because if you don't, like imagine it was just one step until that like dream career and you just didn't take that one step.
100%. And I couldn't agree more with like that you never know what's going to go viral. Like some of our weirdest videos that I'd be like low key embarrassed to even post are the things that have popped off. So I would just say, like, don't be afraid to post. Don't be afraid to be weird and put yourself out there, because there's probably another weirdo like you who's going to resonate
Mhm.
with it, or 100,000 of them, or a million of them. You know, you just never know.
Yeah, and people just love that vulnerability because they don't want to do it for themselves, but they love seeing it, and then they feel so much more understood. And like when you resonate with a store and like their Instagram or something, that's what keeps you there. That's what keeps you wanting to come back.
Yeah, and I think now like vulnerability and authenticity is a really hot topic. But back in the day when I was first doing this, it wasn't very common to be like that real and honest
Definitely, yeah.
about like issues that you had in terms of self-esteem and confidence, et cetera. And so I think that was something that a lot of people really identified with, because when you're in high school or even college, you know, you're still discovering who you are. And I remember I went into college with really low self-confidence, and just being so self-conscious about everything. And it took those friendships and this kind of experience to give me the confidence that I needed in order to be successful. And now looking back, like I just wish I could tell that little girl, you know, that it's all going to be okay. There's nothing wrong with you because girls were mean to you.
Mhm.
It's like as long as you can be proud of the person that you are and know that like you're doing everything you do with the best intentions, then there's no reason for you to be self-conscious.
Yeah. So would you say that like just seeing your little self and like looking back was the main factor in motivating you?
I think that my main motivating factor at the time was trying to save my family, because
Hmm.
we were really in a bad situation with the music store, which granted was very successful for over 20 years, you know, and like CDs
Yeah.
was the hot place to hang out. It was amazing, but my dad was really depressed. Like we've had different mental health issues in our family, myself included, and I have always been a problem solver. And so I was like, we need to do something. Like we
Hmm.
can't just sit there and hope that people walk through the doors. And so I think that was my biggest motivator. And then in terms of our mission and vision of inspiring confidence, that was really inspired by like what I needed when I was in high school or middle school or college college. I think it's different for every woman. Like everybody goes through tough points with that. Um,
Hmm.
but if somebody else would have been there to tell me, like, hey, it gets better, like you're there's nothing wrong with you. Like I
Hmm.
literally thought something was wrong with me.
Yeah.
Like girls didn't like me, that I was not like what I should be, and I just wanted to be able to be that voice of reason for other people and for my younger self to say that like you are just fine the way you are, actually better than fine. You're amazing. And so are all of the people shopping with us and who follow us and in this community that might feel that way. And if anybody's ever made you feel less than, then I'm here to tell you that like they're the problem, not you.
Hmm. Definitely. I love that. I love that. Would you say your full circle moment was the TikTok part? Would you say it was just taking off? Would you say it was opening the second store? What would you say that full circle moment was?
I think my full circle moment was actually being able to quit my job in New York and move back to Chicago to be able to run this company that I had
Hmm.
helped build full time. That was something that 10 years ago or 7 years ago, like felt like a pipe dream that like
Hmm.
I'll never really get there. But I shouldn't say that because in my heart, I knew that it would happen
Yeah.
because of all of the nights and weekends and posting on my bathroom break and etc. Like all of those moments of work that you do behind the scenes when no one else is watching and when all of your friends are out partying or um, going to bed early or whatever it is, and I'm up till 2 a.m. like working on PowerPoints and
Hmm.
trend research, et cetera, et cetera. Like all of those small moments compound and are eventually going to set you ahead. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that that takes time and you have to have it within yourself to keep pushing forward, even if it feels impossible and like nothing's ever going to work. All of those little moments will compound and eventually you're going to break through. And that's exactly what happened. And I didn't do it alone. I mean, the TikTok really was David and the interns at the time that made
Hmm.
that happen. But without all of the work leading up to that point, we never would have gotten there. And so every little thing that you do that goes above and beyond what your friends and peers are doing is going to compound and set you apart in time. It just takes time.
Hmm. So when you were at your 9 to 5 in New York City, was there a point where you were like, okay, I'm just like, did you free fall and say, I'm just gonna go back and do rock and rags, or were you like,
I think with my 9 to 5, like I always knew eventually that I was gonna leave to do rock and rags, and I was also very upfront about this, like
hmm.
in job interviews, that like that was my ultimate goal, basically. And this is a really good tip for your listeners. Is I always say this: learn on someone else's dime. So I really like before I graduated, I made a list for myself of like what are the things that I'm gonna need to know in order to be successful in my career. So I'm going to need to know how to do buying and data analysis, right? So that I know what type of clothes to bring in. I'm probably going to need to learn paid advertising so that I can drive traffic to the website. I'm going to need to know trend forecasting. And so
Hmm.
then when I went and got a job after college, okay, I'll go to Macy's and I'll learn buying and digital merchandising from a multi-million dollar business. I'll join their trend team on the side so I can learn trend forecasting. Then I'll go to this agency. I'll learn how to do paid social, like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, etc. And then when I mess up, it's gonna be on their dime instead of it with my like,
Hmm.
$10 that I have to spend on
Yeah.
advertising. And so I honed those skills while working for somebody else, and I would go into my 9 to 5, come home, take a breath, and then start working on Rock and Rags for the night. And this was every single night for years and years and years, whether that was in college or afterwards. That was always something that I did basically every single day. And then when we when the website actually launched, that was when I knew I had to go home. I mean, it was just
Hmm.
my brother in the basement of our store packing every single order by himself, uploading all of the images. I mean,
Hmm.
name it, he was doing it, and it was just too much for one person.
Yeah.
It also so happened that at that time was right when COVID was about to happen. So my brother David literally drove out to New York from Chicago, packed up my car, picked me up, and brought me back home to Rock and Rags. And that's where I've been ever since.
That's awesome. And that advice is so good because I feel like post college, a lot of people think that they just automatically have to go into the 9 to 5 if their dream like isn't fully in session by then. And just to, that's so smart to use that as a ladder to obtain your goal, not saying like, I'm giving up here, like it's post college, I have to go like into the real world now, like using it as your ladder to success and still having that dream like to come to.
It's a win-win, right? Because you're making money so that you're financially stable enough to not be freaking out and making decisions based off of that. But then you're also getting hard skills. And when I left Macy's, one of the best things that one of my mentors had said to me is when you start your career, it's like you have a blank canvas or an empty toolkit, and every different experience that you have adds a color to that canvas or adds a tool to your toolkit to make something that's complete at the end. And ultimately, what you're doing is you're building your skill set that's going to just make you more marketable, more successful, whether that's in the next job that you get or whether it's in your dream business that you're going to start. You're collecting all of these things. And so that's how I try to think of it with every experience is like that I'm diversifying what I have to offer to the world and to other people. And I think when you think of it that way, it can feel less soul sucking going to work for somebody else because you know that you're getting something out of it specifically
Yeah.
for yourself.
I love that. I love that. Um, so now what's a day in the life look like and how much time would you say you dedicate to the company?
Every day is different, but now that we have our Highland Park store and a store in Lincoln Park and the online store, I'm bopping around a lot. So normally I'll wake up in the morning and first stop is our Lincoln Park store. I'll pick up whatever I need to bring to the other locations to go out to customers and head to the suburbs. Then from there, it can look like a myriad of different things, normally aligning with our social media interns first thing in the morning to figure out what are we posting for the day across different channels. Once that's done, we'll work on orders, getting everything out to people in a timely manner. My role specifically has to deal with everything customer facing. So this can look like marketing, which of course is social media, but also email and text. Also, what does the homepage look like? What do the collections look like? What does the pop-up on the site look like to capture emails? This can also look like buying. So, looking at our sales data and understanding what do we need to reorder? What are new trends that are up and coming that we should be getting things in for? So, it really varies every single day. Every day is different, but it never gets boring. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And when you're running a business with so many moving pieces between three different locations, thousands of different SKUs and items that we carry, different employees, etc. There's always something, some problem that
Mhm.
needs to be solved. And so being able to just roll with the punches and be flexible for whatever that day needs is usually what winds up happening.
How it goes. Yeah. And I remember when we were on a call last year, you were like drawing pieces. Do you design stuff too, or was that just what you wanted, what you were looking for?
Yes. So right now, I'd say the vast majority of our assortment is still purchased from wholesalers, but one of my big goals is to be able to get a higher penetration of our inventory to be stuff that we've designed ourselves in-house. So actually, right after this podcast is over, I have a design meeting with our team to talk about what styles we want to bring in. That's something that as time goes on, I hope more and more of our inventory will be stuff that is designed in-house by myself, and then of course collaborating with our team on what those trends are. So that's one of my favorite things to talk to our ambassadors about is
Hmm.
what trends are incoming, what kind of styles they're loving that they want to see in Rock and Rags, because I think it's really important to listen to your customer and listen to your target demographic and give them what they want as opposed to telling them what they should want.
I remember you showed us one. It was like before Coachella, and it was like the big belts, and then we all saw them there. We're like, oh my gosh.
Right? Right.
Um, yeah. So there, I had one question from someone. So going into trend marketing and all that, how do you say you stay up to date on that info and those trends? Would you say it's like TikTok, Pinterest, like,
That's a really good question. So I have a couple good tips for that. First off, we are located in the Midwest of the United States, which is basically where trends hit last in the world. So Australia is a season ahead of us, so they're already in summer. So the first place I'll look at is Australian brands because you can see ahead of season some of the things that are going to be cool there. Then I love the Vogue Runway app. I'll look at fashion shows and try to identify patterns between the different shows that I'm seeing. So, for example, I'm wearing cheetah print right now. I'd be willing to bet if we looked at some of the fall 2024 runway shows, um, that we would see, or fall 2023, whatever, past falls, New York
Hmm.
Fashion Week, you'd be able to see animal print popping up in there. And when you're seeing it across a bunch of different designer brands, generally that's something that's going to become a trend. So I remember, yeah, before Coachella last year, I saw belts everywhere on the runway, and then I saw them in Australia
Hmm.
and in these different areas, and then saw them pop up at Coachella, which is really our first hint at festival trends for the year. So I was able to pretty confidently say that those were going to be big. I remember I predicted the bow trend like two to 3 years ago, and my team thought I was crazy. I also predicted the bubble skirt trend. So like I
Hmm.
literally had a sample of a bubble skirt made over 3 years ago now that we haven't produced because we were like waiting for the right time. And I can tell you the trend is here now. Uh, yeah, those are some of my favorite tips. And then of course, like Pinterest, TikTok, etc. Those are all good places as well, but that's going to be based off of the information that I shared. So it kind of starts on the other side of the world, goes to the runway, trickles down to the celebrities, and then trickles down to us from there.
So if you had to guess one summer trend right now, what do you think it would be? We'll
Ooh,
call it and then we'll have people come back and we'll see if you're right.
that's such a good question. I think we're seeing a shift in terms of jean shorts. We're not seeing as much of like the super frayed shark bite short. We're seeing a little bit like longer length, without as much fray on the bottom. We're gonna see like bows and ribbons continue. They're definitely not going anywhere, although I think we'll probably start to see them wind down as we head into like the winter season. Cheetah print is gonna be really big. It's big right now, but it's just gonna get even bigger as we go into summertime. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so those are just a couple off of the top of my head.
It sounds like a weather forecast, like going into the
Yeah,
winter.
definitely. And another way is like when we go to these clothing shows, you'll go for 2 days, and the first day it's like amazing. There's so many different things, and by the second day, everything starts to look the same because you really see these trends like carrying across all of these different brands. And so um that's another way that I can generally tell trends pretty easily.
Yeah. So we'll have listeners come back in the summer and see if you were right.
Yes, please do. No, I was just thinking of more once I get started. I think you'll see a lot of like the
No, I
Western
remember the
kind of.
board you made. I was like, oh my God. It was just like kept going and they were all right.
I love putting together trend forecasts. I think it's so much fun. And when you do put together trend forecasts, it's important to pull from a lot of different areas. One of the coolest things that I did when I was in college is I got to take a trip to New York, and we got to go to WGSN. And if you're in college right now and if you're in fashion, look up if your school has access to this. Like I know for Indiana, we get free access, which is something businesses have to pay thousands of dollars for. Um, but they do trend forecasting where they'll analyze a variety of different factors around the world, from like socioeconomic factors to pop culture, etc. And they'll predict trends like 3 to 4 years out, was so wild to me at the time. Like, how could you
Same.
possibly know? But it all came true. So it's very interesting.
That's so cool. So I know you said designing more pieces for the store was your dream for the future. Do you have any other dreams for the future of Rock and Rags?
Yeah, I think like we really want to grow around the country. Like Rock
Hmm.
and Rags in person is such a special place. Like you just walk in the door, you're automatically welcomed and ideally made to feel comfortable in your
Hmm.
own skin. And I don't think a lot of stores are like that. Like I had a lot of experiences in high school when I would go into a nice store that I definitely couldn't afford, and the people working would just kind of look me up and down.
Hmm.
I hated that
No,
feeling.
I hated it. I remember I was in one of the stores and I was maybe like 15 years old, but it was a nice store. But it wasn't like anything like it was people my age. But I remember a security guard literally followed me around the store thinking I was going to steal, and I was like, I'm never going there again.
Yeah, and like that's an experience that like look, however many years later, you remember that. And so
Hmm.
I really want to be able to bring this really positive environment to other communities around the country. So we want to open stores in different states around the United States, and then who knows where it will go from there. I want to be designing our own lines for different seasons throughout the year. That would be a really great place to get to. And then who knows where it will go from there. But ultimately, I just want to continue to help other young people in their career continue like building this community and making it a resource for people like you and the other people in your ambassador class to be able to know that like you have a safe space here with these girls
Yeah.
and we'll support one another.
Yeah, definitely a safe space. And for the people that are listening, like when Kira's talking about the store, it's not just like a basic store you walk into. Like it is like Pinterest-esque. Like you could, there's so many photo opportunities in these stores.
Yeah, we try to make it an experience because ultimately, like, we can all shop online. So there has to be something cool in order to actually motivate, at least for me, motivate me out of bed to want to
Mhm.
go out and go shopping somewhere and like leave my apartment. So, yeah, we try to make each store unique. So, like the Lincoln Park store, for example, is Mediterranean meets rock and roll glam. So you'll see like giant disco ball mirror, records everywhere, and vintage band posters, but also like really cool plaster shelves that really give me Bali vibes and really bright light and environment. And each store we want to be unique.
Mhm.
So that was something that was really fun was getting to design that store along with our store designer and be super collaborative with it. Like everything like aesthetically that Rock and Rags has become, you can really look back on my Pinterest boards from like when I was 17, 18, 19, and it's so cool that like those have turned into real life a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of the
all like
time.
completely manifested.
Yes.
So my final question for you is what advice would you have for someone who wants to open a business but doesn't know where to start?
Mm. So I mentioned this earlier, but I think the first thing to do is learn on someone else's dime. So do
Mhm.
what I did, make a list of what do you need to know in order to be successful in that business, whatever it may be. It doesn't need to be a fashion brand, but like you're going to need some pieces of knowledge in order to make it happen. So whether that's different programs that you need to use, different hard skills, different connections, make a list of those and then figure out who can you go work for in order to make that happen. Now that doesn't mean that on the side you can't be launching your side hustle. Lock down your Instagram accounts, lock down your domain for your website, etc., so that you know that you have those. And then just start building behind the scenes. Like remember that it's all of the late nights and the weekends and all of that time that you're going above and beyond when your peers are not, that's going to set you apart from everybody else. But like, don't be afraid to start. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Like all through college, I was the rock and rags girls, whether I was at like the frat party at my sorority, etc. Like,
Mhm.
that's what people knew me as. And you have to be able to like stand strong and represent yourself. And when people do make fun of you or give you a hard time or question you with your little business, quote unquote, as they'll say, which they will,
Yeah.
that's okay. Like use it as your motivation because now, however many years down the line, I have my peers from college like reaching out to me who want to start their own
Mhm.
businesses. And they're like, oh, how are you like successful so fast? But actually, it wasn't that fast. It's
Yeah.
been 10 years of doing this, and it's you just have to start. That's the
Yeah.
best thing that you can do and use whatever resources are available to you. Reach out to people who are doing what you're doing or who you can learn from. Like you never know who's going to respond and who could eventually act as a mentor to you. Keep track of your connections. Like I always tell this to our interns, start an Excel doc with the personal connections. And when you meet somebody that you feel like could help you in your career, write down their information, their email, and write down everything you can remember about your interaction so that 2 years later, when you want to reach out again, you could say, hey, I met you at this place. We talked about dogs. like I would love to jump on call and catch up. I mean, I'm making this
Yeah,
up,
yeah,
but
yeah.
whatever it is, like connections are everything and networking is everything. And I wish I would have started doing that earlier, keeping
hmm
track of like those personal connections.
Yeah, because going back to what you were saying about like people from high school calling it like a little business at the time, I had an influencer come on in high school. She was like starting it and she was so badly bullied. And then they're like reaching out to her now because she's doing really well. And she was yeah, thank you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best things happen outside of your comfort zone, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you stepping out of your comfort zone is going to make other people uncomfortable, and that's okay. You're not here to make other people comfortable. You're here to create your dream life, and if that's going to piss people off in the process, then so be it. But
Mm-hmm.
you'll hear from them in 10 years when you are successful and they need something from you. So just
Exactly.
remember that like you are your own biggest supporter. You have to be your own biggest motivator, and eventually other people will support you too, but you're really all you need.
I feel like that's a perfect way to end it. Kira, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'll make sure to link all the socials and everything for Rock and Rags. And yeah, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
My pleasure, guys. Definitely go check out our Instagram at Shop Rock and Rags and our website, shoprockandраgs.com. And I hope you enjoyed this podcast.